And who wants to take oh wait, no. Who wants to take a journey with me down a long and tortured metaphor? So I was thinking this morning. I wasn't actually thinking. What I figured out that I can do is I have these out of pocket. I think is the correct term. I have these out of pocket things that freak you guys out. All right. And it's not just you, all right? It's everybody, all right? That freak everybody I've ever known out. I have a very specific style. I have a very specific writing style when it comes to trying to be funny. And it rarely lands. And that's fine. And so I noticed some things this morning. And what I do when I notice things is I go to Gemini and say, hey, am I the only person that's noticed this thing? Do I need to talk about this thing? For example, I was negatively critical of Jelly Roll about a year ago. And I got a bunch of flack for it. And everybody's like, oh, Jelly Roll this, Jelly Roll that. He's a total great dude. Well, he's surgically enhanced and clearly relapsing. So, I don't need to talk about that. And then Markiplier's movie, I saw people trying to claim or trying to indicate that Markiplier's movie has this conspiracy against it from Hollywood, that they're trying to hide its success. When, actually, the reason it's no longer on the charts as far as how much money it's generating is that it's no longer generating any revenue. It had a really big opening weekend and then it dropped off. But that's what happens with fan media. And this is why Hollywood, whether it be Hollywood or AAA gaming or television or whatever, just insert here, because it used to be music, and then it used to be Broadway, and then it used to be novels, and it used to be all these, just insert thing that you give a shit about here. The reason that fan media is never taken seriously by the major conglomerate is because you only buy one on opening weekend. That's why. It doesn't have what the industry calls legs. Okay? And what that means is that the numbers don't continue to travel for weeks. What happens is you get a big blip and then you get a drop off. And then you get bitched at in between blips. So there's no money in between the blips, but you get, if you were to take the graph from the talking about the product, the project, the product, and the amount of money that you get, what you would find is an directly inversely proportional amount of negative speak when there's no money being spent. As the money dwindles, the amount of money being spent, what you find is that the gap, basically, if you had a closed graph of the two, you'd find that the gap is filled by the amount of negative talk in the community. And so what that means is the fans aren't really fans. They're not really proselytizers. What that means is that they're not taking a bucket of water, taking an empty bucket, walking up the hill to get to the thing that they're calling themselves a fan of, filling that bucket with water, walking down the hill, and bringing that bucket to people who don't have it. That's what they're not doing. What they're doing is they're showing up on opening weekend to give it support. They're buying their t-shirt that day, and then they're putting that t-shirt in the closet, and they're not telling anybody they're a fan. Nobody actually wants you to know that they're a fan of Markiplier. Nobody is proselytizing. Hey, do you watch Markiplier? Oh, you should totally watch Markiplier. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Let's sit down and watch this canon. Da, 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 da. Now you're a Markiplier fan. Go and spread the word. Nobody does that. Everybody assumes that everybody's seen and knows and has an opinion about Markiplier. In that same way, Serenity, right, with Firefly, it couldn't sustain a trilogy because it only did business on opening weekend. Because what Firefly fans weren't doing was getting all of their friends together and saying, hey, you missed this thing, let's do a watch party of this DVD. take copies of the DVDs. I bought 8. So bring them to your friends. Make this a cult phenomenon. They didn't do that. They didn't tape share it. They bought their DVD and they sat in their room and they enjoyed their guilty pleasure, because that's what fandoms are. They're guilty pleasures. If you can't wear it in public and talk to strangers about it, Good Mythical Morning, for example, when I lived in Columbus during COVID, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to be a Good Mythical Morning fan and whether I wanted to identify and share that I liked that product, or that I at least watched that product with other people, because it was massive. The numbers on their channel say that it is not unlikely that you will meet another person who likes their content. The number of people who watch their content. 12 million, 15 million out of 300 million Americans is still 0.05 maybe, if I'm doing the math right in my head. It's hard to keep these big numbers. I don't remember the numbers I even said. But it's not unlikely. It's not unlikely. I know this because I kept running across them during COVID. I worked in a grocery store. People would be in the grocery store. And now, we didn't dress like we worked there. And so, at all times, like if you were coming in or going out, you didn't have to wear your shirt. And so if I wasn't in uniform and I was in the store, I would talk to people if I saw them wearing like a shirt that I thought was cool or whatever. And I saw this couple, they're both wearing Good Mythical Morning shirts. And I said the tagline, whatever that thing that they say at the end is, whatever they have the fans say into the camera, and then they, now the Wheel of Mythicality or whatever that tagline is, I said it to them. I was like, oh, cool. Good Mythical Morning. I said the thing that you're supposed to say to fans, to one another. And they looked at me like I was both mentally retarded and a threat to their safety, their immediate physical safety. I was just like, all right, dudes, have a good morning. I don't know what that is. And so let's work our way toward a tortured metaphor, the tortured metaphor. Because I'm talking to Gemini about these things to make sure that I'm not saying things that are out of pocket, too out of pocket, that you're just not going to know what I'm talking about, or they're just so radically different from what you hear other people saying that you're going to get upset. And so Markiplier's thing, it just doesn't have legs, right? But Final Fantasy VIII deserves a little bit of discussion on the channel when we're not watching it. And Gemini attempted a tortured metaphor because I pivoted to the Super Bowl just happened. Let's talk about that, is what they say at the beginning of the show. But they always say something. They have the fans. They have the fans make those videos. And then the fans say, blah, blah, blah. Now it's time for the Wheel of Mythicality. There's a thing that they say. There's a tagline that everybody is supposed to know. It's a part of the cult that you're supposed to say to one another. No worries. I don't remember what the thing is. I don't remember what the tagline is. But we should talk about Final Fantasy VIII. Because I played it for the channel, and what I've noticed is that AI, whether it be Gemini or it be Notebook LM or whoever it be talking about it, non-player characters or people who have been trained on what's available to them in the internet conversation, don't fully understand what's happening with the junction system. They don't fully understand what's happening with the junction system. They think, oh, I'm just junctioning magic to my stats. No. No. You are junctioning a guardian force to your brain. That guardian force has stat junction that it can learn to your brain and to your physical body. You're junctioning magic to the guardian force. You're feeding the guardian force energies in the form of specific raw and packed up magic. And that's going inside you. And it's feeding this, you're junctioning it to power this guardian force, this demon that you can call out of you. It's really not a tortured metaphor. That isn't. But everyone misunderstands. Everyone misunstands how the junction is working and what the draw is doing. All right, this needs to happen. Everyone misunderstands it. And so the tortured metaphor is that coaches in the NFL, teachers, Final Fantasy VIII, it's all metaphors about the teacher-student dynamic and learning from experience, okay? And so one of the things that you might remember or might notice if you go back and watch it is that a remarkable number of the GFs actually aren't story-bound. They're not things that have to happen. They're not things that just come equipped on characters. And a remarkable number of them are optional, entirely optional, right? Shiva and Quetzalcoatl come to you. They just come equipped. But you have to go get Ifrit. Now, it's a story thing. You get it as a part of the story. But the others, you have to draw, or you have to go fight. You can miss them. You have to take them. You have to find their power. You have to harness it. And then you have to train it up. You have to build them back up. You have to give them this AP. You have to harvest and farm this AP for them. You, the player. But it's a process that's happening. It's happening simultaneous or cooperatively with the character. That's why they have separate levels, and they have these abilities that they learn and that you don't learn. They're the thing that's doing the learning, because you're no longer learning, because you've equipped this thing that's taking your memories and your learning experiences and turning them into supernatural abilities that allow you to fight witches from the future. And for story reasons, sap your memories. Because a little bit of amnesia or doing stupid things for story reasons is necessary in horror and Western heroic storytelling. Because the Western hero actually is an idiot. Someone capable of battering another being with a weapon until it's dead is not a philosopher. And so, like, the Viking Age bard and storyteller could not tell stories about this thoughtful philosopher king, warrior, hero character, because they didn't exist, and no one would take him seriously. It would be an obvious fiction. And nobody can engage in obvious fictions without being told or trained to suspend their disbelief. Because we have learning brains, and our brains, whether we want them to be or not, are always learning. They're always learning. They're always adapting. They're always absorbing information. It's what they're designed to do. We can try to stop it, and we can try to numb it, and we can slow it down. But as we know from addiction and chemical dependency, all of us who've engaged in any kind of chemical dependency know the brain adapts to that as well. The brain adapts to the environment. The thoughts adapt to the environment. The thoughts adapt to the habitual thoughts that we have. The brain adapts to the thoughts that we have. Okay? And so if Final Fantasy VIII is a metaphor that I don't think is tortured at all, I think it's beautiful and perfect and just a masterstroke of genius, then coaches at any level, but let's just focus on one specific place where there are a lot of them, just a lot of coaches. The NFL, football, but the NFL, it's something that we talk about a lot on the channel. It's something that I feel like we share, whether we do or we do not. Coaches at the NFL level are like guardian forces. And so the Seahawks fans need to be prepared that the Seahawks are going to slump next year. They're going to take a step back because Clint Kubiak is one of the greats. That's why he's a head coach. Well, thank you, Damien. I don't know. Well, thank you. I don't know that books are the first thing that I enjoy, but yeah, I do think deeply. And yeah, I do. I am literate. I do read. But books aren't the only thing I think deeply about. I haven't actually engaged in a book in like 3 weeks. No, thank you. I am aware of Reddit, and I'm not interested. So tortured metaphors, the things that we junction to our brains and what we learn from them. Um, coaches, coaches come not just with playbooks, but they come with things that they allow you to do, right? So if your offensive play caller, for example, only calls outside the outside zone run scheme, you don't need to know what that means, but you know that the opposite of the outside is the inside. But your skill set is the inside zone scheme, but your coach only ever calls the outside, which you're not as good at. Then you're not going to have your potential unlocked by that particular coach. But he's been assigned to you. He's been attached to you for the duration of this season, or his contract, or your contract with the team, the duration of your employment. And so we can think about this in the same way with managers or at work, right? They either do or they do not unlock our skill sets. They either do or do not allow for a positive work environment, right? That the people around us are our party in some way, or maybe there are also people who are junction to us. It just depends on, it's all a matter of perspective. Tortured metaphors. And then what we draw out of the environment to feed these things, that's where the reading and the watching and the experiencing comes into play, right? You create these permanent memories that we use to feed our potential, right? That we use to fuel it. My mom used to say that we can only think in terms of the words that we know, the sentences that we have heard, and the images that we have seen. You can't think in terms of anything you have never experienced. So, for example, try to describe the experience of being a black hole, or of being a rabbit, or of being me. And you can't. Not accurately, not well, not without time and effort and experience, right? The best you can do, is describe it from your perspective. But that's in terms of things that you already know, because your perspective is dictated by your experience, by the things you've already been, seen, and done. And so the reason we're all addicted to novelty, well, you're all addicted to novelty, is the brain. The brain wants new things. The brain wants to see new things and have new experiences and learn. The brain wants to learn. It's super early. I'm doing this super early. Yeah, it's not even 8 o'clock yet. But I'm ready to get out of the tent. I'm ready to get this day moving. I got food to put in my belly with money I haven't made yet today, but betting on the future. I got food to put in my belly, and I got a novel to work on. And we got Final Fantasy IX to play because we got a lot of things that I want to farm out here at the beginning of the game. I want to go sit on the back of a chocobo for a while, and I want to go hit stuff in the face for a longer while. And yeah, we got maybe 4 hours. Probably, I could probably fill 4 hours in that little spot of game that it's given me to run around in, because it's given me shit to do that I want to accomplish, and we need to be like level 15 before we move on. Legitimately, probably level 13. This next part of the game is not easy, and I would like to have more of my spells and abilities already mastered than what I do. I've been moving it quick to get to this spot, and I moved a little bit too quick. I almost endangered being able to do that hunt at all by being too weak. I had to cheat, and I'm not even worried about that. I chose to cheat. I didn't have to cheat. I chose to cheat in order to get the outcome that I wanted, and I got it. I got the silver fork. Oh, and that reminds me, we got to go into that marsh. I haven't told you why, and I haven't hyped it up yet either. But we're gonna go in that marsh for reasons as yet my own and none of your business. Now you probably know what they are if you watched me play last time. Not that you could hear me. All right, so that's the end of the tortured metaphor. I'm done. What do you junction in place of memories? It's an interesting thought experiment. It's not a perfect metaphor. It's strained. But as an RPG mechanic, it's near perfect. It's beautiful and amazing, and I love it. I miss it now that I'm in a more traditional RPG equipment format. I do miss it. But the game isn't about drawing experiences and drawing power and drawing power is the correct word. Drawing energy, drawing motivation. That's the next thing I need to talk about. Do you want to talk about the next thing? You want to just pivot to a thing that's not a metaphor that we just need to talk about for the channel? And that's motivation. Internal versus external motivation. That's what we really need to be talking about. Like if we were just going to sit down and actually beef, like rap about something that matters. The difference in being internally and externally motivated. Rich Eisen has been trying to explain this to Chris Brockman for the last week or so. And yeah, we're going to talk about heroes and anti-heroes too. We could talk about all that right now. I usually do this for an hour before I leave, and I could zip up my jacket and I could pull my blanket up over my legs. I'm only letting myself get cold to motivate myself to actually get up and move. But yeah, the anti-hero is an interesting conversation to me too. It's one that I want to get into because the hero and the anti-hero aren't obvious in the same way that Christ and Antichrist aren't obvious. What that means isn't actually obvious, and we have been sold a bowl of bullshit about what the anti-hero actually means since about the time of Breaking Bad. I watched this whole series of documentaries. I don't know why I accented that the way I did. I watched this whole series of documentaries circa 2012 to 2015 about the rise of the anti-hero and how important anti-heroes are in literature and how important it is and what it says about the modern world that anti-heroes are so important, right? And not just in TV and movies, but in video games too, right? So the anti-hero is usually your player character. And that's been a thing since about Fable, because Shepard can be an anti-hero, and even Going Paragon has anti-hero elements. So who's the hero though? Because just like I agree, or not I agree, I identify by an anti. The in Philaletheia, that's an anti word. I am anti forgetfulness. It's a little warmer today. It was a little warmer last night too. I didn't have to sleep quite so claustrophobic last night. So if truth in Greek is actually anti-falsehood or anti-forgetting, actually, that means that you can arrive at statements, for example, of truth, statements with truth, through negative attribution. And this is the same way that we arrived at good definitions of God, via negative attribution, like what by defining what God is, and the method that you arrive there is by defining what God is not. So the anti-hero doesn't define the anti-hero. The anti-hero defines the hero. So who's the hero? You see what I'm saying? If the choices that a hero would make define the hero, then not making those choices defines the anti-hero. Because he doesn't have to be against the hero. He's just not the hero. So we can't define an anti-hero by saying what an anti-hero is. Because we were all taught this in first grade. You can't define a word. For example, blanket, with the word. You can't say a blanket is something that is a thing, is an object that blankets another object. That didn't define the word. That did not make what a blanket is any more clearer to me than it was before you said the word. So we can't say that the anti-hero is the person who makes decisions that the hero wouldn't have. We have to say who the hero is. And so who's the hero? What's a hero? Because a hero is subjective, actually. Heroes are subjective, actually. I prefer, if we're talking about heroes, I actually prefer the term paragon to heroic. Does anybody know what the Greek word hero meant? Because I don't. I actually don't know the etymology. If we were going to sit down and actually do this, like if I were going to sit down and actually try to do this right now, and I'm just kind of seeing where the time goes and the conversation. But does anybody know the word hero in any other languages? I think it's a person, I think that's correct. A person admired for their courage or their specific traits. Because by the Iliad, Homer is playing around with what's heroic by having many heroes on stage, and they're pillars of different cultures, different civilizations, and some of them are courageous, but like Odysseus, he's just cunning. He's just kind of a ruthless dickhead, but it makes him heroic. And so I think the hero is subjective to the culture more than to the story. But I think that the definition of hero is largely irrelevant. I think that we know what the role of the hero is to do. And the role of the hero is to solve the thing in the most virtuous way possible. The most, not necessarily the most expedient. Sometimes it means switchbacks, and sometimes it means being over here, and sometimes it means that the villain is going to win more often than he's not, as the hero, right? Okay, yeah. So the word, the idea, this word hero, even in Spanish, is just wrapped up in the Greek notions of this person who's a larger than life version of what their civilization or their culture or their community thinks is most excellent. And so what that means is that the hero or being heroic is the person that when you see them immediately, as soon as you see them in the story, has excellence, is a guardian or is a protector of something, or is on their way to being that. Because the hero, when you see the hero at the beginning of the story, they're usually not heroic yet. They're usually going to undergo a very specific journey that's going to leave them a guardian or a protector of something or some idea, someone. And it usually requires a wizard and travel into the underworld, near-death experiences, these things. And so the anti-hero is not that. It's the person in the story who solves the villain without undergoing the hero's journey. And so they come out the same dude, or changed by the story, but not a guardian or a protector. They come out a different kind of thing because they're not a paragon, they're not excellent, and they're not virtuous. And modern TV and movies, we focus on the not virtuous, and we put outright evil people in the heroic position, and then we say, how would this outright evil person, this person who's neither inspirational nor aspirational, two ways that you can identify the hero just at a glance in the story is who is living the inspirational or aspirational life. That's your heroic character, right? That's where the subjectivity lies. Because even the hero, the main character, if what you find aspirational is lots of available sex and money and food, if the hero doesn't have that, but there's a character in the story who does, that's your hero. That's the character in the story who is heroic to you. This is where it gets subjective. So the anti-hero is the character in your character's spot who's not doing what your character would be doing. They don't have to. Lacking virtue doesn't have to mean being entirely evil. It just means that you owe a lot more explanation. You owe a lot more pathos and ethos as a writer and as a character to the people around you than if you're a paragon of virtue, a traditional hero. And so, for example, as we're playing through Final Fantasy IX, as we're playing through Final Fantasy VIII, Squall is an untraditional hero, but he's not an anti-hero. He's a hero because he's a guardian and a protector. Even Cypher, the reason that you're allowed to hate him and you're encouraged to hate him is because he's actually a hero. He is heroic, actually. He's a paragon of his particular virtue. He just does things that lack external virtue. He doesn't need your external virtue. He doesn't need you to approve of what he's doing because the sorceress does. And that arrives us at internal versus external motivation. Yeah, that's exactly right, Rach. Yeah, they're in the role of the hero. They're in the position. The camera is watching them like they're the hero, but they're going to go about dealing with the villain by entirely questionable means. Yeah, means where you go, okay, now that you've done the thing, we're going to actually need to have a trial and you're going to actually need to explain yourself. That's the anti-hero. The hero just gets the ticker tape parade and the keys to the city because everybody understands his methods. The anti-hero has entirely questionable methods. For example, Doctor Strange is actually an anti-hero. He's a good example of a well-written anti-hero because you would never think that Doctor Strange is an anti-hero. But he's cheating with the magic. That's an entirely questionable method. And they explore this in the two-part Infinity War, right? His methods are entirely questionable, and they require explanation after the fact. But that makes for a good story. You understand that anti-heroes make for more compelling stories to tell. That's why they're so popular. They make for more compelling stories to tell, but they also make for much more they require much more critical thinking on the audience's part, not to think that, oh, well, I can just start selling meth and shooting Mexicans. No, Suicide Squad didn't do well at all. Hey, Trogdor. Burninating the countryside, I see. No, Suicide Squad didn't. I haven't found the writing, because DC went totally. You're actually right about this. Just if you were to expand it out, they went anti-hero with all of the Zack Snyder DC stuff, and I didn't find any of it compelling. I didn't think they did a very good job. But you hate thatched roof cottages. Fuck those villagers. I don't feel like doing it right now. I'm not actually feeling goofy. I'm still waking up, and I'm actually kind of pissed off about the things that I let myself watch this morning. So I'm trying to talk my way through it creatively so that I'm not pissed off, so that I don't go to my work pissed off. You would have more affinity for the anti-hero. Most humans, like, if we're just going to sit down and we're going to find ourselves in a character, we're not going to relate to the paragon. We don't relate to Jesus. Like, when we see Jesus on that cross, we don't think, yeah, I'm going to do that. We think, that would be terrible. We don't relate to that behavior. That's why I'm saying there's nothing wrong with relating to the anti-hero, because the anti-hero is often the underdog. Right. That's why I defined the hero as the person that when you see them, you're like, oh, that guy is obviously the main character. And then if the main character is anybody other than that guy, or that guy dies early in the story, then you're just in an anti-hero narrative, because the hero's not here. But that place begins at hopelessness. Like, the hero is also the hope. He's like the great white hope, right? Whether he's a white guy doesn't matter. White meaning blank canvas onto which we can project our hopes. White in English means clean, not racial purity. The racial purity was tacked on much later. Well, it doesn't have to be. Well, the underdog story isn't manipulated by politicians. You are manipulated by politicians by way of the underdog story. The underdog story can relate to real life. The underdog story is often a true story that has been adapted, to use earlier language from the show, adapted to suit a new purpose. But the brain is constantly adapting information. So, for example, you're a politician, to reach back to Final Fantasy VIII, you're a politician, you come across this underdog story, you junction it to yourself, and you use it as an attack on your audience, right? You summon this good story, and you play it, and let it play out in front of your audience in Final Fantasy VIII terms. If you want to think about the Final Fantasy IX fake magic that we were throwing during the theater bit. These are really good visual motifs that really accurately describe what we're talking about. You don't have to like them or know them, but they work on so many levels because you can see the visual of it as well as bandy the words. What's up, Bathy? And you don't have to agree with me. When we start talking about stories and we start talking about repetition of a story, we have to start talking about copyright, right? We got to start talking about who's telling the story, where did they get it from, and why are they telling it to me? This is what I ask people that come through the channel. They'll start telling me personal stories, and I'm like, okay, that's a personal story. Why are you telling it to me? And then they get mad. Like, it's like, well, I didn't ask for a personal story. Why are you telling it to me? I'm not being aggressive. It's not that I'm telling you to stop. I'm just curious why now, why me, right? Because we use these stories to communicate something. Stories are about communicating something, whether it's bigger or smaller, doesn't matter. And so, yeah, I like underdog stories, right? Like Sam Darnold was my favorite story in the NFL this year because he's the biggest underdog in the NFL. Nobody believed in that fucking guy but me. It really felt like that. I've been watching him. I've been watching him since he came out of college, and it's like that guy is a freak. He's a freak. He's got an amazing arm. He's still athletic. He's never got hurt. The only problem is that he still believes in his arm. The only problem is he still believes in his arm, and that can't be a problem. Yeah, he put it up into harm's way, but they won. People don't understand that game. They're calling it a bad game. Oh, it's a bad game because it wasn't, 100 points on the scoreboard. That was a great game. I literally could not have scripted it any better. We don't like it, but sometimes fights are decided by styles. Sometimes when two fighters step in the ring, whether they be teams of fighters, in the case of NFL, you're talking about proxy warfare, so whether it's two armies with all their siege engineers, coaches, and generals on the sidelines, or it's just boxing. Two guys, two pairs of gloves. Like I was watching Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson clips the other day. Just whatever. It's the thing I do. And both of those guys won on style. They won on the style of boxing. You couldn't hit Mike Tyson. You couldn't hit his face. It seems crazy to say, but you couldn't hit him. He was so fucking fast. This was so fucking fast, and his shoulders were so fucking big. You couldn't get a square hit. And so he just let you batter his shoulders. He just let you batter his shoulders and his gloves trying to look for a good hit. And then you'd get tired, and he would just level you. And Ali was the opposite. It wasn't because he was so big. You just couldn't fucking hit him. And he would put his hands down, and you still couldn't fucking hit him. And then he would get you mad. Muhammad Ali would get you mad. And would get you to put your hands down. And then he would just devastate you with combinations to your face that you could no longer get your hands up to defend yourself against because you're tired and pissed off. And so your hands are out here, and he's just battering the shit out of you. Sometimes fights are they're decided by styles. And that game on Sunday was decided at... Chris Brockman is right. That game was over with the first snap when the Patriots over pursued to the run, and K9 turned it into a 10-yard gain from a 2-yard loss from the over pursuit into a 10-yard gain. That game was over at style. It was over at style. Over pursuit works in the AFC because of those quarterbacks. But where did Darnold cut his teeth? He cut his teeth in the AFC, in the NFC North, and now in the NFC West. He played against Belichick twice a year for like 3 seasons. Sure, the Panthers also happened. But he cut his teeth in the AFC East when Belichick was still there. I'm pretty sure that Brady won a Super Bowl while Darnold was with the Jets. What we learn, the things, the people that we junction to our lives. Usually when quarterbacks step up to the podium to talk about the people who believed in them and the people who gave them the external motivation to keep going when they couldn't find that internal place to keep believing and keep pushing. When the money's not enough, when the women aren't enough, when success on the field isn't enough, who do you go to? And usually they talk about their coaches. Darnold talked about his parents. And that's the cheat code in the 21st century. If you want to know the difference between me and a person who thinks they're traditionally successful, it's how much their parents actually loved them. It's how much their parents actually loved them. Rich Eisen called Sam Darnold an assassin because when he was talking about this, his parents having his back the whole time. His voice caught one time and he goes like that. And then he continues, voice perfectly level, like he was having a pregame presser on some random Wednesday. No, not pregame, a post-practice presser on some random Wednesday. And Rich Eisen called him an assassin. He said that he would have been just blubber and tears all over everywhere. But he began that by saying, my dad and I don't cry in front of one another very often. Actually, he might have said, my dad and I don't cry very often. The in front of one another might have been brackets that I put in there to soften that blow for the modern millennial, the modern man who cries at the drop of the hat for things that don't need it. And I will make fun of you. Absolutely, I will make fun of you. But he was able to keep it together. Why? Because he had the example of his dad, right? Who was his dad's example? His dad's example was the literal Marlboro Man. That's a heroic arc, by the way. Sam Darnold is the hero, and he's the obvious hero, because when you saw him in college, it was like, that guy has all the traits. He doesn't stay out at night, he doesn't care about women, he doesn't care about the money, he's just here for the virtue of playing quarterback as excellently as possible. And I'm really happy he got his hero moment. I'm really happy. I felt like I've only listened to Hey Angela, what's up? I've only listened to Rich Eisen talk about the game, but I felt like, because I wanted to know what Brockman had to say. And then I got tired of hearing what Brockman had to say, so I had to stop listening to the two of them. But Brockman was, no, it wasn't Brockman. It was Rich's kid. He said, my beautiful baby boy. He called him my beautiful baby 14-year-old boy. He said he looked at me at some point during the game, some point during the third quarter, and he goes, Sam Darnold's not going to make the big mistake. And it wasn't a question mark. It was we're going to lose. Because he's not going to throw this game away in the third quarter. And it's like, yeah, he got his hero moment. Yeah, he was the hero. Now, he didn't get the MVP, and he didn't need it. He didn't need it to be the hero. You're the hero in that system by not throwing the game away. Being up 22-6 or whatever, and not throwing the game away. 22-7 maybe. And not throwing the big pick. That was a great game. That was an awesome game. You just have to watch it and know football. Know what you're watching. That game was inevitable. That game was the Thanos snap. I think Rich was right. If they play that game 100 more times, if they played that game 99 more times, the Patriots might get 9 of them. Might. They might have a few games where they make something happen early and they're able to figure it out, but that game was determined by the styles. I keep thinking about how Rich kept telling him, he's like, look, man, you watch the game from the TV broadcast. I watched the game from the Seahawks end zone, right? So I watched the game from behind the Seahawks defense for most of the game. He's like, nothing was open. Take care, Angela. I hope you have a good day too. A lot of people don't know football. The Super Bowl is not the attending audience of the Super Bowl is not people who know ball. It's people who have the money to be seen on TV. The Super Bowl is a cultural touchstone from your couch or from your bar stool. It's not a cultural touchstone to be there. It's a status marker to be there, or it's a Make-A-Wish kid moment. We as adults need to be more honest about when we're having a Make-A-Wish kid moment. Like, I don't know if she's heard me say it. This kind of looks like I have a one wing situation going on, and I kind of like it. It looks like I've got kind of a wing wrapped around me, and even from this perspective, it is wrapped around me. Looks kind of cool. It makes me feel comfortable. Makes me feel less alone a little bit. Just the visual motif. But I'm pretty sure I've said it aloud a bunch of times. But even just tromping through this snow, carrying my backpack with my mobile workstation, people seeing me thinking that it's just my homeless person junk, right? Because homeless people just carry around a bunch of junk, because homeless people tend to be people who are dissociating from the fact that their ego is completely shattered across timelines and they don't know how to put themselves back together. So they're just carrying the junk from all these broken lives that they've given meaning to, because you got to do something. You're still alive, right? Your brain is still learning and adapting. Final Fantasy VIII, time compression, all this stuff that every donation I get, but especially, I know I've said it to Rachel, that the knowing, the seeing the donation, seeing the tip, seeing the money show up in my Cash App feels like making a wish. It feels like making a wish and it coming true. I feel like a Make-A-Wish kid. Just like somebody said it on one of my lives, like I might have been struggling through a foot of snow for 2 miles, but somebody was watching me do it, and they looked at me and they said, "Do you realize that while all of us are sitting in our office jobs hating our lives, you're playing in the snow as an adult?" And I said, "Yeah, I do realize that, actually." I know, Bill. My dreams are coming true. My wishes are being answered, and so I would highly recommend remembering the times that our wishes are being made come true by other people that were basically just a Make-A-Wish kid. And so now I need to make a wish. I gotta get up. I gotta get out of here. It's time. It's been 53 minutes. I'll give you 7 more minutes of my time. I know that it's Tuesday? Wednesday? It's Tuesday. Hi, Striker. The night side of the world, heard that? Yeah, it's early, and I'm treating it like it's noon. It's not even 9 o'clock. Yeah. It's super fucking early. I don't know what that means, Kangas. Did she get her chips? Yes, she did. Good girl. Good girl. I had some Root Smarts, like sweet potato and other non-potato chips. Hey, yeah, thank you for letting me hit on 3 of the subject matter that I've been meditating on before I fall asleep. And thank you for allowing me to weave a 3-ply rope of self-motivation, trauma, and learning, environmental learning, through the tortured metaphor of Final Fantasy VIII's junction system. Because it makes sense if you think about it. And you get a little stoned. Maybe you got to be a little stoned. Maybe you got to be on my frequency. You just gotta let things be what they are a little bit. Nah, don't worry about it, Striker. They'll still be there. Oh, you know what? There was a specific thing I was supposed to do with the first 15 minutes of this time slot. Well, entertainment. Entertainment stops at your definition. I don't really know that I find sports entertaining, but I don't know that I know what entertainment really means. Huh? Nah, I just got weed resin stuck to my trachea or whatever that's called. Final Fantasy VIII is underrated. We just finished playing it for the channel last week. You can find that in the playlist of that name, I think. I just called it FF8. Give me my mouse. Oh, look at you. Look at you. All right. So I'm going to pivot now. I forgot that I was supposed to do this. I'm going to pivot now. We're reading some Leaf, is what I call it. Some of the Chosen Saga. And so here's the thing. The Chosen Saga is going to dramatically change from how I originally composed it. Because there have been 15 years, 14 years between me and the original. No, there have been a lot more than 15 years. There have been 15 years between me and the draft that I'm working from to edit this. Yeah, I'm going to read, Striker. I'm going to read some of my work because I forgot that I spent a bunch of hours yesterday editing and writing, and that this deserves to go read. And so what I'm telling you is that my original chapter structure is going to change. And so I'm going to just stop calling these by chapters and scenes. I'm just going to name the scenes, and then I'm going to give you them in order in a document that you can pay for. I'll make it make sense, trust me. But for now, this might be chapter 1, scene 1. So just forget everything that you knew about the pacing and the structure as I had it. This is probably going to be where the book opens, because this is where I've wanted to open it since my original draft. Okay, that's not where that was supposed to start. Why? Oh man, if it deleted the opening part, I'm going to be so mad. Probably what I did was edited this in 2 documents. And yeah. Sorry, give me a second. I didn't know I'd fucked that up. I was apparently very tired. Okay. I just copy pasted the wrong document. I can fix this. Okay. I'm calling this the Gold Road. My father is alive. The thought is strange after all these years, but so was having the dream. It isn't a dream, though. Not really. It's a memory that haunts his sleeping mind, a reminder of where he is from and where he's supposed to be, where he should have already been, where he's going. He looks to the north, seated in the back of a covered wagon, one of a dozen or so, he's never bothered himself to count, arranged in a loose, tightish circle, as much for defense against anyone who might want their contents without paying for them as to protect the fire pit from the wind. One leg folded under him, the other dangling in the half-light of pre-dusk. That should be pre-dawn, sorry. Pre-dawn. He's the first of the travelers awake, his hair overlong and standing up from his brow like the crest of some tropical bird, sways gently. The screams are the hardest part. His hands freeze for a moment. The last of the thin, oily froth of his shave dripping from the suspended knife in his hands. For a moment, he almost thought he still heard those screams, but it was just the wind. He shakes his head, rubs the back of his hands against his cheek. Smooth. At only 20, his baby's smooth face and wide, innocent eyes are the same they were back then, before all this. He barely recognizes them. A glint of light finds his eyes. They jerk to it, and he's looking into the blade. The last of the moonlight reflecting his features back to him, his father's nose hooked, the first hints of smile lines that were ravines around the old man's mouth and eyes the color of red clay bricks, fired in sorrow and unspeakable loss, glare back at him. He's alive, he whispers, defiant of that gaze. His name is Zachlin. He's my father, and he is not dead. I will find him. How many times has he said this to himself? Too many times for him to stop believing now. How long is 13 years? He wonders. Too many days to bother counting today. He drops from the back of the wagon. The leather armor covering his body from toes to teeth marks him for what he is at a glance. The linen cloak around his shoulders and quiver on his hip notwithstanding. He's a long strider, and this caravan is his work. And the great quarterstaff he pulls out of the wagon is his weapon. Taking a big sigh and stretching, he drinks in the morning and nearly stabs himself in the face with the blade he'd just shaved it with. He'd forgotten that was there already. Chuckling to himself, he examines its hilt and the trademark there. LT. Leaf Thunderfist. I'll find you too, he whispers. His eyes linger for just a moment on the blade itself. He'd never seen anything like it when he stripped it from the bandit. It must have been 2 years ago. 3? How long had he and Sophia been doing this? 2. It had to be 2 years ago. She never would have. The blade is a study in lethal geometry. From the short utilitarian crossbar, the steel narrows sharply at the waist like a needle-thin dirk, before flaring back out in symmetrical arcs like a leaf from its stem. These rounded cutting edges swell like a heavy leaf blade, they swell, I don't know why I did that twice. Swell before tapering back to a long, piercing point. lethal. That's what this is. A tool, a killing weapon, forged by a man who saw the world end. He sticks it in his belt. His eyes find the west. The land of the dead? Hardly. He might chuckle at the thought. Everything is dead anymore. Everything died 1,000 years ago. My fault? Hardly. But here I am, trying to save the world? That's a question mark. Hardly. I'm just a boy who misses his daddy. He shrugs, sighs hard through his nose, then blows his nose into the morning cold and damp. The breeze takes the most of the mess away. He rubs his hands against his leathern legs. The trades roads. Hard to miss. That road would be. Paved in actual gold bricks too large for a man to lift, and welded as one piece. By the wizards of rolling hills, it cuts through the landscape like a memory of prosperity no one actually has, or has had in a millennium. It's cold this morning. A voice grouses from the wagon he'd just left. Like the what the cat dragged in, she pulls herself to the opening in the covering, slinking as much like a lazy fire as a polecat. Her hair is black and shimmering as the light that blinds is bound up in 2 loose braids that dangle unevenly around her breasts. Flyaways giving her a Gorgon glare as she pulls her cloak around her naked shoulders. Cale, what are you? She begins to ask, voice thick with sleep, then stops, frowns. That dagger again. You were looking at that dagger again, weren't you? He turns to look down at her. With her small, sharp nose, her narrow fox-grin lips pressed firmly together, her high cheekbones and the elegant curve of her eyebrows, framing her almond-shaped eyes, he can't imagine a single of the mother's creatures more beautiful than she. Her features are a rosewood carving that he could never match with his whittling life, no matter the years he has spent at the effort. And this morning, as the new winter sun just begins to peek its head over the horizon, shining slivers of rosy light on his back and her on one cheek, she is officially frowning. I shaved, Sophia, damn, he says with a shrug. Sophia disappears back into the wagon. Mild irritation flashes across his face. She's not going to be naked next time he sees her, is she? Every day, a new chance to upset her. He laughs, though. She's always upset about something. Then, rolling his eyes, I think I love that girl. When she emerges after a few moments of rustling and grunting, she's ready for the day. Her hair is brushed and as straight as the trades roads. It falls in a jet curtain behind her back to a loose tie-off with a ribbon that seems to dance all its own like a red and yellow butterfly made only of flame. Her descent from the wagon begins clumsily, gathering her legs in flounced skirts, but ends with a flourish, spinning her skirts and a fan around her waist. She kisses him on the mouth. Good morning, stupid boy, she says. I love you. If Cale is a long strider, then Sophia is a flame dancer. Barty through and through her clothing, from the flounced skirts, the ribbons on her upper arms, wrists, lower thighs, and ankles, all in shimmering, resplendent shades of red and yellow that trick the eye into seeing blacks and oranges that were never there. Mark her for what she is, a member of a people whose memory and way of life stretches to a before that only they believed has ever happened. Sophia leaves him to his thoughts. Breakfast isn't going to eat itself. Cale's eyes linger on her back, but not on the curvature of her spine or the gentle dancer's roll of her hips. The curved daggers, with delicately carved onyx handles and ebony sheaths, cross at the small of her back just above the swell of her hips. Those mark her as her mother's daughter. Chapter break. You don't see it, do you? Sophia asks. Huh? Cale asks, shaking his head out of his reverie, and his bird crest hair atop his head. See what? Giggling at his side, Sophia says, You're so stupid. I swear, Cale, the mother didn't put eyes in your head so you could ignore them. The sun beats down on them from high in the western sky. A few hours past noon, and the wind and the sun and the growing cold are no joke anymore, if they ever were. He's done with all this walking. Let it be winter. This is their last stop, the last town on the roads. If he's not here, he's not anywhere. With a dramatic but not heartfelt roll of those orbs back front, and using them to actually look ahead of him, what she's indicating is little mystery. A dark line plays on the horizon, maybe a few hours to the north. What was it called? Cale asks her. Nice Inn? You know that can't be right, Sophia retorts with a little chuckle. There's not a nice inn anywhere in the world. The wind, it never really stops, so to say that it picks up here is to misspeak. Punctuates her point in a sort of ironic relief with what may as well be the first true gust of winter. Neither has dressed themselves for cold yet, and they take the moment to draw their light linen cloaks around their shoulders. Well, Cale says, taking a ragged breath, this is certainly the last one. This is certainly the last one. Indeed, Sophia sighs, it is. When he's not here, can we let this crazy quest go? He's not looking for us, Cale. And if he is, I know, I get it. If we get separated, one of us needs to stay still so the other can find them. But why do we think he stayed still? Because, Cale, Sophia says, pointing at the horizon with the glaive she carries like a walking stick, and which she prefers in a fight to her daggers. If he's not there, he's looking for us. If he hasn't found us, and he's looking for us, he's not going to find us this way. Not for years. Not except by total chance. And if he's sitting still, if Eric decided to found the second to last town before the northern wastes give way to certain death, and, Sophia sighs, and, then we go, and we destroy the necromancer. That's and. Sophia's eyes find the eastern horizon and don't break their stare. If that's what you think, it is. And anyway, it'll be winter by the time we get there. We'll get a room at the inn or the tavern or whatever they've got, and if he's not there, we wait until spring and we continue our lives? Sophia asks, still not looking at him. We continue our lives. He agrees to the western horizon. And you won't talk to me about this for the rest of the winter? I won't talk about it for the rest of winter. He agrees. We'll know in just a few hours, Cale. 2 years, reduced to just a few hours. Please, don't be like this the next 3 months. Please? Can you do that for me? Scene end. Fiend! Thank you guys. A little surprise for anybody who decides to watch the full hour. And for those of you who are here in attendance. Wow! Thank you, Rachie. I'm reminding myself not to eat this bag of chips that I got over here because I brought it here for Lucy. What is that? Okay. Normal sounds. Thank you guys for being here. It has been an honor to entertain or amuse you, to engage you intellectually and spiritually and emotionally. And now I'm going to go work. I think the way I'm going to organize it for anybody who wants to sit through this part, I think it's going to bounce from them to Zaglian. No, that doesn't make sense. I have to write a new chapter because that was in the morning, you see. And Zaglian is as the night is descending. And so I've got this gap of time. And so we're gonna do a scene with Leaf that I've always been too afraid to do. So I've always been too afraid to make that scene actually work and put it in the. It was buried in like chapter 3 of the novel. as I have it now, just totally buried. Because I was an insecure writer. I'm more secure now. Whether I'm insecure still is up for debate. But I was a totally insecure writer. I was totally insecure that you were going to understand the motifs. I was totally insecure that the motifs weren't going to be too violent. And I was totally insecure that you were going to understand who these people are. And so the prose is very much tell and show nothing. And so I'm going back and I'm taking out all of the tell prose and I'm showing. And so what that means is that by the rules of good fiction, you have yet to see a day in Leaf's life. You've seen a night in Leaf's life. Well, you've seen an evening in Leaf's life, but you've not yet to see a day in Leaf's life, and that's not fair. And it's bad writing. It's insecure and bad writing to not show the normal day in the life of all of your characters. But anyway, if I stay any longer, I have to charge my phone. So this is the end of the show. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to get out of the tent. I'm going to take a pee-pee. I'm going to work on this next chapter. I gotta compose a scene entirely from nothing to justify a work that I've been sitting on for 20 years. Oh, the chapter, I'm going to get the chapter right. I have no doubt I'm going to get the chapter right. It's just about, right now I got to sit down and I got to have a long conversation with myself about what I want this chapter to be about. And I'm going to mourn a little bit that my genius from the original draft, where I went through 12 chapters that were an expanding metaphor on the creation process, is totally lost. That poem is gone. It's actually not. It's just nobody's ever going to see it. That particular poem, I tend to write something much closer to prose lyricism, prose poetry, than I do just straight prose. My prose is lyrical and musical in a way that your standard fantasy writer just fucking isn't. That's why it lends itself to the spoken word and to being read out loud, because I also blend a little bit of spoken word idiom, sentence structure into it. Like when I say that picking up, like the wind picking up, is just the wrong way to say that, and move on. I really like that 1950s literature, noir. Gemini, when she reads it, she calls it noir. She's like, oh, it has a total noir vibe. And it's like, yeah, I really like noir fiction. I really like noir prose. Because the narrator has a personality, right? And so who's this person telling this story? He's somebody with a personality. And so it's hard for me to separate the composition itself. You're holding a physical artifact of a book, right? And the words are there because someone put them there, and they're put into a third person universal anonymous narrator to help you suspend your disbelief. And so to assist you in suspending your disbelief, I write it like I was in the world, like the person composing the actual prose, like the person who's putting this down is an historian of that world. But that's also why I do it in first person. Not first person, that's why I do it in the present tense. I describe it like I'm watching it happen right now and I'm telling you what's happening. Like, okay, so Leaf just said that he's an idiot. Yeah, now he's trying to punch Callan. Like that. That's how I originally wrote it. And it feels like that. It very much feels like a reportage from the front lines. That's a fun word. I'm out. Have a good day. Take care of yourselves and be well.